This is Hannibal here from the HannibalTV.com coming at you from Chicoutimi, Quebec, Canada, where I am this weekend, and I'm going to do a daily wrestling news update. Smackdown this week did a 0.5 rating. I have to say I tried to watch the full 6-minute highlight video, but it's just too childish. And they started it off with the little guy. They're calling him the demon now or something. To be honest, I forget his name, but like he's jumping on to 4 people that are just standing there with their hands up waiting to catch him. Doesn't look realistic at all. And then there's very little in pro wrestling right now that I find entertaining. I'd rather watch Dark Side of the Ring or shoot interviews or old wrestling on YouTube than anything that's out there now, because it's just not the same wrestling that I like. There's no rating out for AEW Rampage yet, but Tony Khan did put out a tweet before Rampage went on the air, and he said, quote, 2 years ago, our competitors said this is a marathon, not a sprint. They were right. They also had a head start of over 40 years, and in just over 2 years, we've made up more ground from scratch than anyone in wrestling history, end quote. And I do believe it was Triple H that said this is a marathon, not a sprint, a few years ago, back when AEW was beating NXT in the ratings, which ultimately AEW won that war. Even though WWE says that they're not competitors, they definitely are. But as far as Tony Khan's comment that they've done better as competition in 2 years than anyone in wrestling history, it does help that his father's worth $14 billion. I'm pretty sure if somebody gave me an open checkbook to create a competitive company, I could do some miracles in 2 years too. Guarantee it. TNA never had the kind of funding that AEW had. WCW did. But if you look at it, WCW at its peak had way better ratings than AEW did. So on a smaller level, yeah, AEW's caught up to WWE more. But if I walked out here in Chicoutimi, Quebec, I guarantee you nobody knows. And this is like I don't know, maybe 40 or 50,000 person down here in Quebec. I guarantee you most people don't know what AEW is. Whereas during the Monday Night Wars, most people knew about WCW and WWE. And I'm not hating on AEW. That is impressive. But they do have like an open checkbook, and they're affiliated with the Jacksonville Jaguars, who had a lot of good business contacts and stuff for them to start. It's not like they're starting from scratch, building a business from scratch, using the money from the business to become a big company. They're starting off with pretty much an open checkbook. But I do love to see that there is competition, because as I said, I tried to watch this 6-minute Smackdown highlight video and I didn't even make it to the end because it was so boring. The only good thing I could say about it is there were some attractive females. That's literally Carmella is attractive. I didn't mind looking at her, but that's only because she's an attractive female. It's not because the content was so riveting. The highlight video. AEW is doing something good. I'm not saying, again, I'm neutral. But one thing I'll say that's really good that they're doing is the Owen Hart tournament that they're going to call the Owen Cup. And it's funny, when I interviewed Ross and Bruce Hart, Owen's brothers, Owen and Bruce were really close. Um, I know that Owen was Bruce's best man, and I seem to recall that Bruce was Owen's best man, but I'd have to review that. But it was funny because anyone that watched that video, when I brought up to Bruce and Ross Hart about this Owen Hart Cup in AEW, neither of them had even heard about it. So I know that that Martha is the one that made that deal with AEW through the Martha Hart Foundation. But I would like to see some other Hart members, like Bruce and Ross Hart, used by AEW in this Owen Cup tournament, because those are two really nice people, and they were legitimately close with Owen. And it's sad that they're not really doing anything in the business right now, when they were both helping Stu run Stampede Wrestling. And then Bruce and Ross actually ran the late 90s, early 2000s reboot of Stampede Wrestling. And some of the names that came out of that were Mauro Ranallo, who was the commentator, Harry Smith, now back with WWE, Ted Hart, had all the potential in the world, is actually way better of a wrestler than CM Punk, but his personal demons screwed him over. But when I was watching CM Punk's speech the other night, his return speech, I was just thinking about Ted Hart beating him up in that TNA fight they had, but also like just how much of a better wrestler Ted was than CM Punk, and also better on the mic. But because of mistakes he made, he pretty much killed his own career, and it's sad because he could have been a big superstar. But also Natalia came out of the reboot of Stampede Wrestling. Me, of course, Johnny Devine, who had a good career in wrestling, wrestled for TNA, and was Scott D'Amore's head trainer for a while. And of course, D'Amore runs Impact now. D'Amore himself was involved in the Stampede reboot. Rick Victor from the Ascension. So like these guys would be good to use their minds for a company like AEW. But if nothing else, give them a payday for being part of the Owen Hart thing. I'd love to see that. Just because there's not enough Harts in pro wrestling in the big leagues, in my opinion. I know TJ Wilson married Natty. He's technically a Hart producing in WWE now. So far in Harry Smith's latest run, they haven't done anything with him other than a backstage online promo. So let's hope they do something with him. In other news, UFC held its Hall of Fame ceremony this week in Vegas. George St. Pierre was inducted, with Royce Gracie speaking on his behalf. Kevin Randleman was also inducted, and Bas Rutten and Mark Coleman, two fighters I've interviewed, were there on Randleman's behalf. Mark Coleman did a really long interview with me. For anyone that wants to watch it, it was very well received. Boss is part of this podcast that airs on my channel every week now, Talking Tough, Wednesday nights at 10 p.m. with Butterbean, Boss, Rick Bassman, and bodybuilding champion Sean Reyes. This coming Wednesday is going to be the third episode, and JBL is going to be appearing on the episode live on the Hannibal TV at 10 p.m. Eastern. And why is that interesting? Because Bas Rutten is close friends with Mauro Ranallo, who was notoriously bullied by JBL, according to the allegations, so badly that Ranallo actually quit WWE. So Boss is really close friends with Mauro and has gone on the record saying he doesn't like JBL. So it's very interesting that Boss is now going to have JBL on the podcast. and they're going to talk about this whole situation with Moro that JBL is apparently claiming is a misunderstanding. So Wednesday at 10 p.m., that is going to be worth watching for sure. Could be very interesting. New Japan Pro Wrestling has been holding some events in Texas this weekend. A friend of mine who was there sent me some pictures. As you can see, they were in an arena that had over 6,000 people for AEW. And this is not my friend, by the way. This is another picture. But like, there's hardly anyone in the building. According to the Wrestling Observer, there was around 400 tickets out for the event. But from the reports I've been hearing from people there, it seems like there was almost nobody at the New Japan shows in Texas on the weekend, which doesn't surprise me because New Japan, all they have going for them right now is AEW is promoting them. Because if they didn't have that, they'd be even worse off than they are. My channel gets literally 75% more YouTube views than New Japan's every month. And my channel is funded by me, a regular person. New Japan is a rich company. So it's very interesting. And I love hearing that because I had a bunch of tryouts with New Japan and they never took me. So I find it hilarious that I'm kicking their ass now. They'd rather take these little gymnasts like Marty Squirrel, who is in the news this week because apparently he did, I guess when he was 27, he had sex with a 16-year-old, and the 16-year-old said it was not consensual. So he lost his job as Ring of Honor booker at that time, another company that's at its lowest interest ever right now. But New Japan kept using him for a while despite that, and eventually they took him off their roster due to negative feedbacks. But Squirrel's in the news because some company in Puerto Rico that I've never heard of is booking him in October. But you have to remember, in Puerto Rico, they kept using Invader even after he murdered Bruiser Brody. So a 27-year-old that had sex with a 16-year-old that supposedly wasn't consensual is going to be nothing for a company from Puerto Rico to use the guy. This is the same place that kept using a murderer, including the murderer wrestling the same night that he killed a wrestler. So their values are a little bit different in Puerto Rico. There's about 100 questions, so I'll just get into some of them. That's it for the news. Yes, New Japan bombed in Dallas. Finn Balor is the guy, the little guy that they opened the Smackdown highlights with, jumping into the arms of 4 wrestlers. It didn't even look like, it just looks like he's jumping to get caught. Bill says AEW is WWE now. Well, it's like they're the 2009 WWE. They're getting all the wrestlers from like 2009. What's cooking? Protein. About to go to the gym with greens in them. Give me some energy. John, 0.5 rating for SmackDown is exactly half of the rating that Fox was expecting. They're only halfway through their deal with Fox. And Fox was expecting WWE to average a 1 rating for SmackDown, which I think they only got 1 or 2 times. The very first show on Fox when they had The Rock and all of these famous people to really make sure that they got a good rating. And I'm not even sure they got a 1 rating more than once. There may have possibly been 2 times that they got a 1 or over. but that was like 2.5 years ago. And now WWE's working with a lot of Fox competitors, and Fox is paying them over hundreds. I think it's like $300 million a year for SmackDown, to be honest. It's definitely over $200 million. So they're not happy. Alan thinks WWE will be sold by the end of the year. Who knows? Tim can binge watching Frankie Williams getting thrashed by Piper on the first Piper's Pit. By the way, yesterday I did an interview with Wrath, aka Adam Bomb, that was just about him reviewing the Canyon Dark Side of the Ring documentary, which, despite Adam Bomb being Canyon's WCW tag team partner, they didn't want him on the show for whatever reason. So it's over half an hour of Wrath giving his views on Canyon. I suggest people watch it. Was Dixie Carter a money mark, Ivan? Yes, she was. But her family didn't give her access to the money that Tony Khan had. I would love to interview Dixie Carter one day. Gerardo said the fact that AEW was better than WWE and NXT isn't in the conversation is a wrestling conversation the marks aren't ready to have. They definitely beat NXT, and now they are going to be trying to compete with Raw and SmackDown. And as I've said, one mistake that I think WWE, and they're not going to do this, by the way, but one thing, if I was a writer or a booker for WWE, and I guarantee you this would make a difference, is get rid of the two brands. The two brands were created because WCW was out of business and they wanted to create themselves competition. Now they have real competition. There's too many titles to keep track of. There's too many wrestlers to keep track of. I would fire a ton of wrestlers. They got way too many wrestlers on their roster. Cut the fat down. Keep it a lesser number of people, one brand, and go for it. Or send like some of the better main roster guys down to NXT and have NXT as the second brand and make NXT better, but get rid of the two brands. The two brands is not doing you any favors. It's way too complicated, and nobody cares anymore about the two brands. You intermix them anyways. So why do we need two tag team champions? Why do we need two world champions? Why do we need that for the women too? Like, get rid of the two brands already. Pussy Monster says SmackDown is unwatchable unless you have an IQ of less than 60. I don't know how grown men can watch this. And it seems like their audience from the demographic is mostly men between like 35 and 55. It's like, how can you watch this unless you do have some type of disability? I don't know. I really don't know. There's so much better stuff to do in life than sit through hours and hours of WWE's current product. Douglas says Blood Hunter is the champ. Well, he is the Texas champion. Technically, the belt that he has is the NWA Texas Championship, and he will be defending that against the Sandman in less than a week. Next Sunday. It's actually 1 week from tonight, October the 3rd, in Wichita, Kansas, at the Cotillion. And Jacob Fatu is also going to be on that card. Matt Hardy is going to be on that card. Fuego del Sol, Rodney Mack. It's going to be a hell of a card next Saturday at the Cotillion. Then World Class Pro Wrestling, the same company that's running Wichita, starts their monthly events at Southern Junction in Dallas, Texas, Saturday, December 11th. And the Von Erich boys Mick Foley, the Blood Hunter, Carlito, QT Marshall, just to name a few, are going to be on Christmas Star Wars December 11th with Kevin Sullivan and Eric Embry, the bookers for World Class, also appearing. How do you do an Owen Hart tribute when Vince owns the tapes from Stampede and Owen's WWE run? It's a tribute based on his name, the Owen Hart Cup. It's not, why do they, people have already seen him wrestle. If they want to know about him wrestling, they can search him up. That's my best answer for you. I don't think it really matters that much whether there's match footage or not. I don't know. Rick says the AEW storylines could be endless and fresh matches. One reason I don't like watching AEW is there's way too much leg slapping and gymnastics, and it's similar in WWE, but it's worse in AEW. But I do like that the crowds are hot and into it, and I do like that there's competition. But I can't sit through AEW any more than I can sit through WWE. James does not like WWE. Lucy is not sure if WWE will still be around in 10 years if they keep losing ratings. They have so much old footage and they make so much money off of old footage and merchandise and the huge, massive money they're getting from Saudi Arabia. Supposedly, they've already made more money from the shows that have happened so far in Saudi Arabia than all of the WrestleManias combined. They'll still be around. They'll just be less and less popular for their current product. People, their YouTube channel makes massive money. Their network, I believe it was over $1 billion deal for Peacock to buy their network footage. So they're not hurting financially. They're actually in better shape financially than ever. It's just there's less people interested in their current product than ever. So many comments here. Hurricane Maverick thinks Harry's wasting his time. Nick Diaz is done. I forgot to mention that. Thanks for bringing it up. Nick Diaz lost last night in UFC to Robbie Lawler. So he's had a good career. John says Boss Rutan is the man. Someone else saying Diaz looks shot. John says the demon is just a face-painted vanilla midget. I agree. Pixelated thinks that the Boss Rutan JBL podcast is going to be interesting. John agrees. I agree. I'm really looking forward to that one. Joe says the lack of realism and entertainment is really an issue with how the business is doing. And as I said this in the other day, I watched some of the Daniel Bryan versus Kenny Omega match, and the fans aren't watching it because they believe. They're like clapping after spots. When anyone does a leg kick with a big slap on their leg, they're clapping. They're watching it because they like those type of wrestlers doing like the gymnastics style leg slapping matches. They're not watching it because of realism or heat, or they want to see Kenny Omega get beat by Daniel Bryan, for example. They're just watching it because they like the quote unquote work rate. I will watch the Ultimate Warrior against Macho Man at WrestleMania 7 any day over that. I'm not interested at all in Kenny Omega or Daniel Bryan. I'm not saying I don't like either of them as people, but that's just not the kind of wrestling I like. I do love the 1985 style of wrestling. Maybe I'm just old LW says he was a fan since '85, and he doesn't watch wrestling anymore. I don't blame him. I'd rather watch an old 1985 episode of anything from the NWA or WWE. David Rush wants a Blaze interview. I don't think Blaze likes talking any more than the Blood Hunter, so I don't know if that's going to happen, but the Blaze will be managing the Blood Hunter next weekend in Wichita, Kansas. Rory says he wants Jeremy Prophet refuses to face Marco Sun. He's making some kind of joke. Jeff Hoover likes to see Great North Wrestling live. There's not going to be any more Great North Wrestling live events this year due to the COVID restrictions here in Ontario, really making it a pain in the ass to run events. But next year, I hope to have at least 6 Great North Wrestling events. 100%. What about, we already talked about New Japan doing terrible in Texas. I'll put up a picture again of a crowd shot from that night to end this podcast. Make sure you subscribe to this channel if you're not already subscribed. There you go. Jeff Hoover, by the way, he was the ring announcer at our recent Kingston Great North Wrestling events. Appreciate all of his help with those events. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates. Support us on patreon.com for $1.99 a month to watch our full shoot interviews ad-free and help our channel grow. Follow us on Twitter at the Hannibal